A builder's favorite day on the job site is when this big truck shows up. Check it out. You all know what this probably is already. Builder's first source, which means my framing package is in here. But this is no standard framing package. Of course, we have some trusses, which some of you use, some of you don't. These are from my first floor framing. But back here, this package, a little different than what you're used to seeing rolling off the back of the truck. This is a ReadyFrame package. I've not used ReadyFrame before. This is my very first project doing it on one of my job sites. I've seen it at job sites before. We've made some videos. This is a pre-cut framing package. Back at the Builder's First Source lumber yard where they make the trusses, they're also pre-cutting all the framing for this house. So when the framers show up, all they're gonna do is drop this load here, pull it apart, grab the first and second floor wall packs, and they're gonna assemble the house like a big Lego set. No saws needed, very little waste. They tell me the framing time is much quicker. I'm really excited. Today's build show, all about this ReadyFrame package. Let's get going. All right, friends, day one of framing, always a fun day for a builder. We got our first two walls up. We're about 2.5 hours in, and already we're seeing that ReadyFrame is faster. But let me break down this for you a little bit. Look at these piles we got here, the Builder's First Source. They did a nice job of dropping them off in an order that makes sense for us. But we've got pre-cut studs down here. We're doing 2x6 framing, so those are 2x6 pre-cuts. We've got sheathing, we've got taller studs, but then the ReadyFrame package and our floor trusses are right here, and this is where the money is. So for instance, we've been breaking down this package right here. Let me show you one wall and show you how it's labeled and bundled. They try to make the bundles not too heavy for the guys moving them around the job, but see all these little straps right here? This is one wall that's bundled together, and you're gonna notice I've got a bottom plate that's pre-cut. They've labeled it where exactly things go. We've got a king stud right there. We've got a cripple, and we've got some standard length studs on there, and it's ink jetted so the guys know. The frame carpenter's also, the head guy on our job is carrying the package that shows each individual wall so he knows what's happening with that wall. But cripples underneath the window are pre-cut and labeled. Even these, which are header cripples, HC right here, all pre-cut and ready to go. There's no cutting on the job. I'm kind of in a slightly remote location, so I don't have shore power. I've got a generator going. I've got a compressor for the nail gun going. But what you haven't noticed is 0 saws so far. So much so that even the header for this is ready to go as well. Labeled so we know exactly where the cripples go. Insulation even between the layers. And of course, you can decide ahead of time with your Builder's First Source guys, do I want this to be a timber strand header? Do I want this to be LVL? Or just some standard 2x6 yellow pine like we're doing here, which is plenty strong and is the budget choice for us. This wall over here, though, I think really tells the story of why ReadyFrame. We've got a rake wall going on. We're right outside the master bedroom. And check this out. On the rake, all those cripples, all those studs are pre-cut with the angle of the rake, and even the cripples are pre-cut. Like, check this out. It's labeled right here, header cripple. This angle has been pre-cut for us too. So as this wall gets built, no saws, no head scratching, no tape measures. Everything's just going together perfectly. Pretty awesome. Again, the header's in place. Our bottom plates are pre-cut. It's pretty sweet. Hey, before we take a break and let these guys go, I want to show you one detail that's not a ReadyFrame detail, but is one that I like to do for bottom plates in all my framing jobs. Okay, we've all seen this. This is sill sealer, pretty inexpensive material. And the main purpose of sill sealer is to provide a capillary break. So moisture in the concrete we don't want to transfer into the lumber above and wick up. But the other big thing this does for us is creates an air seal. Now, sill sealer on its own, unfortunately I found out the hard way, only does an okay job. And the reason is our concrete is never perfectly level. We've got some undulations. So that means we need to do something to make this a better air seal. And I got this detail from my buddy Steve Basic. What we're using is acoustic sealant. We're laying a bead on the concrete, and then we're putting our bottom plates down and putting a bead on top of that. Now, wherever we've got abutting bottom plates, we also need to put a bead where they abut, so that we're making sure we get a good seal here. And the reason why we're using acoustic sealant is because this never hardens. It's always going to be pliable. It doesn't actually dry. Now, if this isn't available locally for you, you need to order it online ahead of time. If you can't do that, an alternative could be something like Lexel or Big Stretch from Sashco that will stick to the concrete, and those will cure over time, but at least we've got something in there that's going to take up all those minor imperfections and stop that air from coming in, which is also going to stop the bugs from coming in. That being said, let's let the framers keep going on this ReadyFrame package. My friends, here we go. Day 6. Check out the progress. It is looking really good over here. Normally at this time, day 6 in, we certainly would not be decking already and have these trusses rolled for the second floor. Hard to predict exactly what our speed up time is, but at this point I'm going to predict that we're 20% faster, maybe 25% faster than traditional framing. Remember though, this is our very first time. This is a crew that I've worked with for a long time here in Austin. Probably, I started using these guys in 2007, 2008. They do most of my work, so I suspect on my next ReadyFrame project is really when I'll see things speed up a little more. We're still trying to get the system, but let's go up to the second floor deck up here, and I'll give you a little bit of a gauge for what's happening and show you a wall that we're working on up there. Ooh, I'm gonna pause right here. Check this out. I'm sure you've all seen floor trusses before. Pretty common down here in Texas, but other parts of the country we don't see these as often. Look at that nice open clear space in there. We actually, I believe, have a square section right here. I'm not sure I can get my camera over there to show you, but this makes it really nice for the trades, especially because we typically have HVAC ducting that's gonna run in this truss space. And with this nice open web, we've got lots of room to run that. Also, no drilling for Sparky. All right, here we go. This is gonna be a good gauge. Right here, we'll show you this wall pack going in. So, this wall laid out here, they just nailed that up this morning. We're about to stand that wall up. Here's more of the packs as we're walking by. Notice what you don't see up here. There is no saw on the second floor deck, and there's no sawdust. We got nothing. And the guys are nailing together this pack right here, this other gable end. One thing that I think really struck me the other day was this angled wall right here really shows the power of ReadyFrame. And now that wall's up, you can see that would take some time getting all those angle cuts, getting everything really set, and just went so much faster having it all pre-cut. Looking really good out here. Not so bad here at 8 a.m., but it's gonna get hot. Give it about 2 hours, that Texas sun is gonna start baking on us. Okay guys, on the second floor are putting our double top plates on. You're gonna see that when the ReadyFrame comes out, that includes the top plate, which has the marks on it, but we're putting the second plate on, the double top plate, so that we can tie the walls together. So on this outside corner where this guy's working right here, you're noticing he's got the walls attached through that top plate, and then we're gonna do that on the interior walls as well. But while I'm up here, standing on the trusses, I thought I'd give you a little dumpster cam. I think this is really telling. We're on day 6 of framing, and this is all that's in my dumpster. Bunch of straps, a couple scrap pieces of cut off from the Advantech that we put down, a few empty boxes of nails, and a little bit of lunch trash. And barely, I'm seeing like 1 2x4 in there. Maybe one other, a couple of skids. That's it. And this is a small dumpster. This is a little 20-yard dumpster. I think that's really telling that we're this far into framing, day 6. And our only dumpster so far on the job is tiny. I think underneath this, we did have a little bit of lumber from the foundation guy. You can see we've got board formed concrete on the side of the slab here. And I believe there were a few form boards that had been tossed. Typically concrete guys will use those as long as they can until they start getting ugly, and they'll toss them. But that's pretty incredible. That's all we've got in the dumpster so far. Okay, it's 9:15. Hopefully you can see that. We started in earnest about 8 o'clock this morning. So in an hour and 15 minutes, we stood this gable wall, this gable wall. This outside exterior wall was already framed, and we framed these interior walls, and we're laid out for the next. So this really shows you how quickly this moves when you've got a crew that's now are a couple days in. We are reading the plans quicker. We're understanding where bundles and packs go faster. We're starting to see some speed. So I could see that on the first ReadyFrame project, maybe you're going to get a 10-15% bump, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you're going to get a 25% bump in speed as you've started to do more than one of these projects and you really start speeding up. And of course, the lumber savings is a hard one to specifically quantify, but here's a quick for example. See that door right there that just has a single cripple above? Oftentimes in the past, it's really easy when you're framing a house with just a set of plans to miss that you don't need a structural header there. And a lot of times we always default to putting a structural header in. We don't need one there. It's really spelled out. It's pre-cut, so we didn't put one. Whereas we've got a header on these windows because they are structural. So just another benefit that does add up over time. I did want to mention too, these headers are traditional headers. These are 2x8s, tripled up. And of course you got to get your engineer involved to make sure that the loads are correct. But this is a family home. We're really trying to do this on a budget and not overspend on lumber. If this was a high-end client's house, I might have specified LVL headers instead of traditional lumber or a timber strand header. The reason why we like LVL is there's one in the distance actually that was needed for load, but these will move a little bit. You might experience some minor drywall cracking, especially in the first 1 to 2 years on the house. Perfectly structural, perfectly sound, no reason not to do it. But I do sometimes like to upgrade to a engineered header just because I know it'll be rock solid and there'll be no movement in time, no shrinkage, that sort of thing. It also helps that we're framing this in the middle of July. We haven't had a drop of rain on this house during framing. And at this pace, day 6, I suspect we're going to have the roof on and this house will have seen 0 moisture. And in fact, it's almost a little too hot and dry. We might see a few studs, especially this SPF, move on us a little bit. We're going to have to go through with a level and just double check everything hasn't moved on us with the extreme heat. We had a framing day the other day that was 106 or 107 out. Here's a quick tip for you. Double top plates. We're putting the second plate on later so we can tie our interior walls to our exterior walls and tie corners together. But when you've got the exterior walls up first, you can see we've got a continuous plate there. How do we tie this interior wall in when we've got that? Well, the guys at Madera, my framer, are going to take his saw here in a second, and he's going to plunge cut on that double top plate out a 2x4 opening, and that's going to allow him to put a double top plate on that kind of sinks in. It made a nice little notch. Love it. So now we've got a 2x6 wall here. We've got our 2x4 intersection. We're about to drop that on. You also notice that he broke it in the middle of that wall right there. Not sure if you've seen this product before. This is called Advantech X Factor. This is by the same makers that make zip system sheathing, Huber Engineered Woods. And it has this coating on the top that is kind of reminds me of the zip sheathing coating. It's going to give it some additional water protection. But what I like about it is that snapped chalk lines, really visible, really easy to see. Sharpie marks stand out really well in here, and it's really easy to clean. It makes a really nice surface when you sweep this thing off. A bit of a premium product. You're going to pay a little bit more for it, but boy, it is really nice. I don't believe they make it in anything but 3/4 at the moment, and I don't know that it's available in all markets, but I'm sure that's coming soon to all markets across the country. Of course, we glued it with the Huber polyurethane glue. They call it Advantech glue, and that's going to give you a squeak-free warranty from these guys as well. All right, guys, go for it. Just that fast. That gable wall got framed. It's a few minutes after 8 a.m. One of the big benefit of this that I think we've really come to realize is by using this ReadyFrame, the Builders First Source people have ahead of time basically framed the house on the computer so that we could look at everything and decide, is everything going to work with our mechanical systems? Not just trusses, which of course is awesome. We're a big fan of floor trusses, but studs, layout, headers, beams, everything's on that model that we can scroll through. And here's a quick example. When Luke, my project manager on this job, was laying out the underslab conduit, he was able to actually look at the layout on the iPad and go, okay, where are the studs and what's this dimension from here to the end of the wall, so that he can actually lay out this pipe. And look at that, it landed perfectly right in between there. Now, a smart builder, of course, could look at the plans and go, oh, I've got a window here. I don't want to place that conduit under a window because they'd immediately have to go through some structural jacks. But having this all in 3D just makes everything really easy and allows you to visualize that house ahead of time. Hey y'all, one thing I wanted to clarify, this video is really about ReadyFrame, which is that process of taking the 3D model and turning that into a pre-cut framing package. But Builders First Source also has this really cool rendering service called Builders First Source Renderings, powered by Paradigm. And they were able to take the ReadyFrame base, basically the bones of the house, and give us an actual rendering of the house that Luke and his wife and family were able to basically walk through the interior of the house and really understand and see the spaces. What's cool about this, now this is an additional service that you can opt for from BFS. I believe they're rolling this out in many markets, but I don't know if this is available today. You have to check with your local BFS. But what that allowed them to do is look at, for instance, what color cabinets in the space make sense. What about this nook underneath the stairwell area? How could we use that? And I think there were several aha moments for Luke and his family for several spaces that frankly are hard to see for people in 3D. I've found that a lot over the years. Sometimes the wife is an architect and the husband works in tech. He can't read plans or vice versa. So to see an actual 3D full-size rendering of the house and understand the spaces, this is a really big deal and was really helpful to Luke. Stay tuned for a future video on Paradigm, but let's get back to ReadyFrame. Okay, day 8 on the job site. The guys have made some great progress here. First floor trusses on the one-story portion up. We're waiting on a crane that's coming next week so that we can, or not a crane, a telehandler, so we can get these trusses on the second floor up. But sheathing's gonna arrive here in a minute. We got a bundle of sheathing. We mistakenly were shipped standard OSB sheathing, but we're going with the Zip R on this project, so that's going back and the real stuff's going up in a minute. Stay tuned, more exciting stuff to go. Friends, welcome back. I think it is day 13. It's Monday morning before the crew's gotten started nice and quiet. This is my favorite time to walk the day, mornings or evenings. But we started 2 weeks ago Thursday. We worked a couple Saturdays. As you can see, we are looking good. Still have some roof sheathing to go and just a little bit of zip sheathing on the back of the house. But otherwise, the house is basically complete. Now, I don't know if I've said this before, but this crew is a cost plus crew or a time and material crew. So I don't pay them by the job or by the square foot like some framers do, some builders do, because I do such unique jobs and I'm such a stickler for how I want things done. I've worked out a deal with these guys over the years where I pay them by the day basically, and I'll get together with Bill, the head of the company, at the beginning of the job before we bid things to clients, or bid's kind of a misnomer, before I give estimates to clients on what things are going to cost, because I'm a cost plus builder as well. I sit down with him and talk about how long we think it's going to take. This project's a little bit different in that this is for one of my project managers. I don't know if I've said this earlier in the video, but Luke and his family, this is their personal house. He's got 2 young girls. We're really trying to do this on as tight a budget as possible. A lot of times my clients have bigger budgets and want more specific things, or maybe have more aggressive architecture. This one is a much more kind of value-oriented project, for lack of a better term. No disrespect to anybody that has a value. That's most of us out there. But we really tried to do things as much as possible to balance high performance and cost, especially knowing that this framer was cost plus. Now, this is his very first time doing ReadyFrame. I think that as we do more of these, we could certainly speed up. If you did multiples of these, you'd certainly speed up. Also, remember, this is not a small house. This is 4,000 square feet or so of custom home framed square footage. And I would like to point that out. Remember, when you're talking to your clients about square footages, especially when it comes to framing, this is not HVAC square footage. This is framed square footage. You know, garages, porches, this giant back porch. None of that's free, so you need to factor that in when you talk costs. Speaking of costs, I know some of you are going to be asking, so let's talk at least a little bit about cost, even though I don't want to be too specific. You know, lumber varies so much in price, and it was super high last year. It's come down quite a bit. And in fact, the timing on this house was actually pretty good when it comes to the lumber market. We're spending somewhere in the $25 to $30 per framed square foot on this lumber package. And that's really going to include everything that I would consider to be rough framing: trusses, sheathing, decking, etc. Now, when it comes to framing, we're not quite done yet. This framer is going to do cornice for me as well. If you're not familiar with that term, that's the exterior trim. That's the Hardy siding, if we had any. That's the soffit and fascia. We're going to be using Hardy soffit and fascia. It's on this bundle right here on the ground. He's going to do all that for me as well, his crew. So I suspect we still have at least another week here before we wrap this up. We're still not quite there yet. But the majority of the structural framing's done. I suspect, depending on what happens with the rain that's supposed to be coming in, I suspect that within the next 2 days we're going to wrap up pretty much all the structure on this house. And then we're going to be doing punch work, and we're doing cornice work, that sort of thing. What I would consider extras on the job and not the actual framing process. But the job's looking really good. So far, so good. I'm really happy with the Builders First Source ReadyFrame program. I've had a couple kinks to work out, especially this being our first time. But if you're not currently using them, highly recommend, number one, that you find a Builders First Source. and a lumber salesperson in your area. Lindsay, who you may have seen earlier in the videos, is my local Builders First Source rep. I've known Lindsay for a long time. Builders First Source merged about a year and a half ago now with BMC, and I've been a BMC customer prior to that merge for, gosh, almost 20 years now. I think I started with them in 2001, 2002. So I've had really good success with them over the years. They mainly do my lumber. Sometimes they do my window packages. Often I get those from other people. And they do a lot of, or really most of, my interior millwork as well. So Lindsay, my salesperson, is a big resource for my company and has really been a terrific partner in my business over the years. Now, one thing I did want to mention about this process, and I don't actually know the specifics, you'll have to talk to your local group, is, we framed this on the computer prior to actually starting this project as part of that ReadyFrame package. And I think that there's going to be some charge for that, because I could see some people maybe doing that and then maybe not moving forward with the ReadyFrame. It's part of their paradigm system that they acquired a couple of years ago. But that was super valuable for us to be able to see this house in 3D, see all the sticks in the air on the computer, scroll around on those on the iPad and see where things were looking. It also allowed Luke and I to look at those plans and go, okay, does our reflected ceiling plan for the kitchen or for the bedrooms, do all those details make sense with the way we framed this? It really allowed us to visualize the house and what it was going to look like prior to getting to this stage. But that being said, guys, let's let the guys finish up the process here. They should be here any minutes, going on 7 o'clock here. We'll get started with framing and I'll come back. We'll wrap up the video later. All right, guys, let's wrap up the video. My final segment here. We took 18 total framing days to build this house, start to finish. So we're here on like day 20 or so, and the plumber's gotten started. A couple final thoughts on this, and I had a chance to talk to my frame carpenter before I put these together. But I know you guys are going to be thinking about cost. Let's address that. ReadyFrame compared to just the sticks in the yard and the framer doing it, it's about a 4 to 6% bump in cost. And if you can relate that to a square foot basis, that's going to be anywhere from maybe 50, 60 cents, 70 cents for a production builder to $1 or maybe slightly more for a custom builder. Now remember, this is in today's dollars, things change. Most of my houses I build are budgeting somewhere in the $30 to $40 per square foot range, materials only. But I think the big savings on ReadyFrame is time on the framers at the job site. And that's really what we saw here. When I talked to Bill and his crew about time, we did this in 18 days, which was 6-day work weeks, 3 weeks. I think this easily saved us 20% in time, maybe slightly more. We also don't do a lot of roof trusses. We typically do hand-cut roofs, and we saw some savings on time there. So we really did great. Bill, my carpenter, said, though, the massive savings are going to be if you did this house again or if you did this over again. So if you're a production builder watching this or a semi-custom builder like I used to do, gosh, if you could do that same floor plan, even if it's modified, boy, you would really see things go. I think the other big savings is you could go to a smaller crew. Really, there'd be no reason why a 3-man crew couldn't frame this house. If we had a bigger crew like we're used to using, I think you can get away with a smaller crew. And I think I said this earlier in the video, but as long as you have one seasoned frame carpenter who can read those plans, it's kind of a big erector set. That's an old man term. It's kind of a big Lego set for my younger crowd watching. Follow the plans. It makes a lot of sense. Does it take the skill out of framing or the craftsmanship? No, absolutely not. You still have to be a skilled framer. You still have to have a craftsmanship mindset. But you can build a really, really excellent house and potentially do it in less time with ReadyFrame with a really consistent package. Now, a couple things I want to mention. We framed this house with all SPF lumber, which is really common here in Texas and really is the lowest cost lumber for us out there. Other parts of the country, it's more common to see Doug fir or maybe some other materials. But I asked the ReadyFrame guys, could I have done this in some other either lumber type, Doug fir, or maybe even engineered, and they said yes, absolutely. As long as it can be ink jetted, you can substitute it. Another thing I might do if I had the budget would be just simply substitute out the wall studs to a higher grade wall stud, a nicer, more expensive material, or potentially an engineered material if I had a lot of raking walls, high windows with light coming down the wall with a level 5 finish. That's where those engineered studs really come in. A couple other big benefits though of ReadyFrame that I hadn't thought of. Laydown space. We've got a pretty big suburban lot here with lots of space to put things down, but if I was building in the city where I didn't have a lot of space, boy, this could be really nice. And compared to, let's say, a wall framed package where wall panels come out, those guys ship a lot of air when they ship those panels. So this is going to take up way less space on the job site. I really like that. And if you're thinking about maybe going to panelize someday, it's kind of a nice intermediate step to kind of dip your toes in the water and see what you think. The other thing that the ReadyFrame guys mentioned, which I didn't think about, was if you increase your cycle time, you're going to increase the time that lumber is spent on the job site that could grow legs, that could get stolen. And a pre-cut lumber package is going to have a whole lot less chance of getting stolen than a big bundle of studs or 2x12s out there that are waiting to get installed, which in a lot of parts of the country can easily get stolen. The ReadyFrame BFS program, it's coming up on a decade old. It's not perfect. We had a couple of hiccups here and there, but it's a really well thought out system. It's not available in every market, but it's in a lot of major metros. So I'll have a link in the description below so you can find out if this is available in your marketplace. But ultimately, talk to your local BFS rep about whether ReadyFrame is an option for you guys. I really enjoyed building this house. I think we built an excellent house for Luke and his family. So big thanks to Luke for letting me use this house as a bit of an example. And I think with what we did here with zip system R sheathing, stay tuned for my other video on modified Monopoly framing. We've got a really well-built house, a really high performance house, but we stuck with not a modest budget, but a slightly lower budget than a lot of the houses that I build that people have higher budgets. So great house, really impressed overall with the ReadyFrame system. And lastly, big thanks to Builder SourceSource for sponsoring today's video and the Build Show in general. They've been a partner of mine in my building business for 20 plus years now. They've got like 500 locations around the country, so there's probably a BFS location near you. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content here every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on TikTok or Instagram, otherwise we'll see you next time on the Build Show.